Welcome back, everyone, back to the Horror Master YouTube channel, and welcome back to day 4 of my 31 Days of Horror series, where I rank a horror movie franchises movies per day, 31 franchises for 31 days. And like I said, we're on day 4. And if you have not yet to see my previous 3 videos, I really suggest y'all to go back and watch them, because like I said, I've been having a lot of fun doing these videos, and it kind of gives me more of an idea to express my love for horror. I mean, you can see it on the nickname, for fuck's sake. But enough of that. For the next video, you can kind of see in the title, we are tackling the Exorcist franchise, a franchise that a lot of people don't really go deep into the franchise because they just see the first one and that's it. But if you go beyond the movies, beyond the first one, there are some movies that you'll be like, it was worth watching. Others, not so much. You can give it take depending on your preference. But to be honest, when I was at the beginning, when I first was doing research for this franchise, I actually watched 4 out of the 5 movies long time ago. The one of the movies that I have yet to that I didn't watch, which I'll mention it when we get to ranking, was really fresh air. But you know, the Exorcist franchise, of course, has gone to a TV series, which like I said before, I'm not including TV series. I'm just focusing on the movies, which maybe down the future I might do it, including the TV series. Which the TV series did okay. It got like maybe 2 seasons out of it, but I'm sorry about that. But it really wasn't really the best. But enough jibber jabbering. Let's get into the ranking mode, as we're gonna rank all of the Exorcist franchises movies. So at number 5, at the bottom of the barrel, at the very, and I mean god awful bottom of the barrel, we have The Exorcist 2, The Heretic. I have said many times throughout this couple of videos that's the worst movie in the franchise. It's not the best, it's not the worst. In this occasion, The Exorcist 2 is a more, again, it's not bad, but it's really bad because this movie goes everywhere, because Reagan's now a teenager. She has in her mind that supposedly she doesn't remember the events of the first film, that supposedly she was sick, and I guess all that trauma went up into her head, and she's trying to go to therapy, all that stuff. And then the dream sequence, I mean, not even that you have James Earl Jones, when you have Darth Vader, Mufasa himself in the movie. The dream sequence of this movie is so weird. It's one of those sequels that I to this day, I'm like, why the hell did they do that sequel in the first place? I mean, of course, cash grab, but again, I wish this movie was executed better. But if there's a film in the Exorcist franchise I recommend not to watch, it's probably this one. I mean, as a curiosity, go watch it, but don't bother watching this. It's really awful. The story doesn't make sense. Like I said, not even the fact they had James Earl Jones, the man, the myth, the legend in this film, it doesn't help the movie at all. Like I said, it's one of those films that I just wish it could have just stayed somewhere and evolved and never come again. Kind of like the like Batwoman movie film that was going to be released, but that's a different story. Now, the next 2 films I want to talk about are both the prequel movies. And at number 4, we have Dominion, a prequel to The Exorcist. Now, before I begin talking about Dominion and Exorcist at the beginning, a bit of a backstory. So, before Dominion was the first movie was supposed to be released by if I remember, let me get the name of the company. It's, if I remember the company, Dominion, Exorcist. So originally, this movie was supposed to be released by Morgan Creek Productions. At the beginning of filming this movie, the studio kind of started to get involved and do reshoots that will eventually become the reshoots of The Exorcist, the beginning. And knowing that the studio was afraid that this was going to be a huge failure, they decided to finish the film but never release it, and they decided to record and release The Exorcist, the beginning, which we'll talk about in a bit. But with Dominion, the thing about Dominion that I first, like I said, this was the film that I never saw, that I never wanted to see because I'm like, so there's two prequels, but I now understand the story a bit more. And Dominion was a pretty entertaining film. I mean, I'm not saying it's it's not the superior prequel to The Exorcist that I think should be, but in terms of Exorcist films, it's a pretty entertaining film. I mean, it has the supernatural aspect, the church where they find underground, um, the kid who kind of gets possessed by Zuzu. Yeah, that's his name, Zuzu, the demon from the original Exorcist. So it's kind of weird that there was. I think it's the only horror franchise that I know of. I could be wrong. That has two prequel movies that are the origins of how The Exorcist began. I think that's like the only franchise. I mean, I could be wrong. Maybe somewhere out there knows, I guess, the like a prequel that has two origins. But regardless, you know, Dominion is a film that I do recommend anyone to watch it. That's a curiosity. I mean, it has some really has some really good things to it. Not as much as, of course, The Exorcist, the beginning, which I'll talk about in a bit, but as a film, a pretty good film. Not to mention that this film flopped. I mean, that was the reason why Morgan Creek Productions wanted it to put The Exorcist the beginning instead of this film, even though, spoiler alert, The Exorcist the beginning also flopped, to be honest. But, you know, as a movie, go get and watch it. At number three, speaking of prequels, we have Exorcist the Beginning. I felt that this prequel was a proper prequel to The Exorcist. It has the tone of the film, the atmosphere of the film. Again, this movie flopped when it was released in theaters. So from that flop, they released Dominion, which again also flopped. But in terms of prequels to The Exorcist, this was the one that I always remember watching on TV and always like getting these chills about, of course, Father Karras going into the church, finding the statue of Pazuzu, and of course dealing with Pazuzu. And I felt that this ties in more into the lore of The Exorcist besides Dominion, because Dominion, the thing I didn't like about Dominion was they kind of almost wanted to make it a film that was kind of in the Exorcist universe, even though it is, but I wanted to be something different, but it's not. With the beginning, I felt that they actually tried their best to incorporate a lot of the elements and make the the first one good and kind of make their own story to tie it up, and it worked. Honestly, I think that the Exorcist the beginning did work as a prequel. It's the movie that I go more in terms of the Exorcist franchise. So, in terms of the Exorcist prequels, the beginning, the Exorcist gets to me my number three spot. Now, at number two, which is gonna shock a lot of people, this is a bit higher. We have The Exorcist 3. Now, The Exorcist 3 is one of those weird films that doesn't get talked about, which is a shame because neck and neck with the original, The Exorcist 3 probably might be my favorite or second favorite Exorcist film in general. When you have Brad Dourif again, which again, Brad Dourif, the man, the myth, the legend behind Chucky, my idol, give an almost Oscar winning performance as the killer, and how I liked it. I like how the story goes and it kind of ties up to the original, and it kind of leads up into this psychiatric hospital where they have, Damien Karras, not the Damien Karras, but the body of Damien Karras inside a facility that is possessed by the spirit of Brad Dourif's character, which is a killer. And I just love the fact that the intention that Brad Dourif gives to his work is so, probably one of his best performances next to the Chucky series. Is so intense, so scary, makes you want to be like, shit, he's gonna fucking kill me out of the fucking screen. But it's so good. And then of course, I like the fact that how he's able to kill these killings while being still locked up in this insane asylum or hospital. I like the fact how they tied up with that, and it's just so amazing that Brad Dourif was able to give a almost Oscar-winning performance that a lot of people don't give acknowledge to. Not to mention the fucking one of the greatest jump scares in all of horror. One of the most underrated ones of all time is when the nurse is coming through the hallway and you see somebody with like a cloak or white dress or something with some big ass cutting scissors, and then we just don't get the visual that that he cut his neck. We just see the statue of a Jesus with cut head off, which kind of indicates what actually happened, which I love that. I mean, if they would have showed how he killed the nurse, it would have been okay. But the fact that they didn't show us made you want to be like, oh my god, he actually did it. But I mean, give The Exorcist 3 a really, 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 really look, because in terms of sequels, this is the only one that I think is a really, really solid sequel to the original. Which, speaking of that, at number one, we of course have The Exorcist, the original, the first one, which is has been regarded as one of not the scariest horror movies, scariest film of all time, and for good reason. I mean, I remember watching this as a kid. It traumatized me for maybe, I want to say, a week, because I just couldn't. The visuals. I mean, you're talking about it in the late '70s. The visuals at the time, when you see Reagan going down the hallway kind of backwards, the blood, the head spinning. The Exorcist in itself. At the time, when people would go see the film in theaters, people would actually faint because of the horror and how of a controversial film it was. And I mean, it has test the test of time. I mean, for me to have it number one says something. I mean, it's one of those films that I always watch every year on Halloween because it's The Exorcist. I mean, no other Exorcist film, whether it's The Exorcist from this franchise, the last Exorcism films, The Exorcism of Emily Rose, so on and so forth. No other Exorcist film has been able to come close. Maybe Exorcist 3 might be the only film close to the original, but a revolutionary film, a film that you know will go on in infamy. I mean, for fuck's sake, it's been close to 45 years since this film was released, and it's still talked about to this day. People actually have done papers on the film and how much of an impact it had, not only on horror but in cinema, in pop culture. I mean, you even get that in the Simpsons Dream House of Horror. You get that in every single Halloween special out there. I mean, in the scary movie franchise, Scary Movie 2. I can go on and on how important this film was to cinema in general and to horror, because at the time, this was in the late '70s. The special effects at the time weren't what they are right now, and mostly CGI. Back then, they were practical events, puppets, makeup effects, trying to make the film as real as possible as they could, and they executed this film, no pun intended, to their best. And like I said, it's one of those films that will stand the test of time. And for those reasons, The Exorcist I is at number one. And that does it for this video, guys. I hope you guys really enjoyed this ranking of the Exorcist franchise. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe to the Oscar Shenanigans. Follow me on my Instagram. Follow me on my Twitter. Stay tuned for tomorrow's video. We'll be ranking the Conjuring universe's films. Yes, not only will I be ranking the Conjuring 1, 2, and 3, I will conjuring also the Annabelle films, the Nun, and the Curse of La Llorona, because all those films are in the universe. And they're really good films, but I don't want to spoil it too much, guys. Stay tuned to tomorrow's video about my thoughts about the Conjuring Universe's franchise. And I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Stay safe. And until next time, stay metal.